Pokemon Bolt Black is one of the hardest ROM hacks that has ever been created by Drayano. The trainer battles, gyms, even Team Plasma have been upgraded in serious ways. And why not make it harder by adding Hardcore Nuzlocke rules into the mix to ensure us a very difficult run? The Hardcore Nuzlocke rules will be in the description, and dear God, it's right next to that muy bonita like and subscribe button. So join me as I try to survive a Hardcore Nuzlocke on Pokemon Bolt Black. Now, in the beginning of the game, we are actually able to obtain our starters, so I go ahead and choose my favorite, Snivy. We then are met with a battle with Bianca, and if you haven't played these games before, the trainer battles versus both of the rivals are kind of a slugfest of us just trading tackles and scratches. But fortunately, Bianca falls to a couple of tackles and Charon does the same. This gives us the dub over them, and if we talk to our mom downstairs after destroying my room, she will give us early access to a bike. That is sick. We then make it to the professor that gives us our Pokedex to finally start our run. We then head to Route 1 where we can catch ourselves our first encounter, a Zigzagoon. Absolutely terrible, but let's hope that plus attack nature will hold strong. As soon as we hit Accumula Town, we are met by N, and me being the naive, egotistical player I am, I did this battle completely blind. He starts off the battle with Ninkata as I lead with Snivy. Absolutely seeing a Leech Life coming in my future, I switch into Zigzagoon into an incoming one. Ninkata and I start doing a status dance, trading Harden for Tail Whip. And after not seeing any progress, I switch it up by hitting it with Tackle, but for not much. As Ninkata goes for a Harden, getting its defense to +1. This is clearly not good. In a way, I am banking on a crit, but Ninkata just keeps boosting its defense more and more with Harden. Eventually, Ninkata is chipping me down with a couple of scratches to 9 HP as I send off some Tail Whips, getting it back to neutral defense. Ninkata has now brought us to 5 HP as we have brought it down to a quarter, so I switch into Snivy, and after getting hit with Leech Life over and over, we end up losing our starter to a literal Ninkata. I don't really have much of a choice here, so I send out Zigzagoon, and after surviving on 1 HP from scratch, we can finally break the speed tie and take it out with a few more tackles. This next Pokemon is a Mankey, and after landing a tackle, we finally get taken down by 1 more scratch, ending attempt 1. A full reset of the game later, and we find ourselves back in November Town where we can pick up Snivy once again, and then we head back to Route 1 where we can find our encounter, the GOAT himself, the absolute legend, a Bidoof. And by God, the sheer determination on his face gives me hope for this run.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Now that we're going up against N again, we can employ a different strategy to see more success this go around. He sends out Ninkata as I lead with Bidoof, and now he keeps setting up with Harden, which is kinda bad, but we can nullify him by using Growl to lower his attack. This is great because we can get him to -3 attack while he is doing less and less damage with Leech Life and Scratch. Of course, right as soon as we go on the offensive, he goes on the defensive by setting up a Harden as we send off a Tackle. We then start slugging it back and forth, Scratch and Tackle, but Lord Helix himself goes ahead and defeats that Demon Spawn. Next, he sends out his second in command, Mankey, so I go ahead and switch into Snivy as he just goes for a Focus Energy. I use Vine Whip as he goes for Leer, and then I use another one to bring him to half as he does around the same with another Scratch. He then hits us with Scratch again to half as we bring him to the red with another Vine Whip. It was the speed tie to begin with, but Snivy luckily won the tie, defeating the Mankey, bringing in his last Pokemon, Purloin. Purloin uses an assist that transforms into a Focus Energy as we do about a quarter with a Vine Whip. It goes for assist again, transforming into a low kick that literally does 2 damage as we lower its defense with Leer. Now, I am very happy that this Purloin went for assist instead of Scratch because that could have ended us, bringing us to 3 HP with a low kick as we bring him to the red with another Vine Whip. I then switch into the God himself to tank 2 more scratches and then ends the battle with 1 final tackle. Both of my mons were absolutely cooked, and this was just the first battle. But after that battle, this helped me and Bidoof be for real. We then head over to Route 2 where we can catch ourselves a very good encounter for this early in the run, a Caterpie. Now, a lot of you guys will go ahead and shame Caterpie for being a very frail bug type, but after leveling him up to level 7 and 10, we can evolve him into a very beautiful Butterfree. We definitely needed that extra bulk for the battle that we have upcoming with Bianca, and she might have received the craziest buff I have ever seen in these games. She sends out her Meowth, but not just any Meowth, this one has the ability Technician. She starts the battle by flinching us with a fake out as she follows it up with a scratch to bring us to half as we land a growl, nullifying its attack. I at least want to land 2 growls to get it to -2, so it hits me to a quarter as we land our second growl. I then switch into Butterfree to tank a scratch that does nothing thanks to the attack drop, so now I can start dropping some fat confusions on Meow. He really isn't doing much with Bite, and we are cranking some good damage with Confusion. We then get hit with another weak Bite, and then we bring him to the red with another Confusion. Now, why Bianca has a potion this early in the game, I don't know, but we end up using a very weak tackle thinking it was going to be the end for Meowth. We do though get some good hits in with Confusion, so after getting hit to 12 HP with another bite, we can finally take out that dumb cat. She sends out her last Pokemon, Oshawott, that gets hit with a Confusion for not much as we get brought to 6 HP with a water gun. Not liking that at all, I switch into Snivy that can take home the win with a couple of Vine Whips. This will grant us access to a trainer that will give us a Pampor, and that is great for 2 reasons. The first of which is we have something good for Charon's Tepig. Now the great thing about this battle is that Charon only has 2 Pokemon just like Bianca, so we go ahead and send out Bidoof as he sends out Starly. Now at this point in the game, we only have Tackle as our best move, so Starly and I keep slugging it out with Tackle and Wing Attack, but eventually we get brought to the red. My best course of action is to switch in Butterfree into a quick attack, and then we bring it to the red with a Confusion as Starly weirdly goes for a growl. No potential crit Wing Attack means that we can clean up the battle with 1 more Confusion. Charon now sends in his Tepig, so I just stay in, risking the crit, but I go for a Confusion that relatively does nothing as Tepig hits us to half with an Ember thanks to Butterfree's goated special defense. This will give us a phenomenal pivot into Pampor that can clean up the battle with 3 consecutive water guns. Now this is where the game turns up the heat to a million. We have to face Chili, the first gym leader, and half my team is not only weak to his, but we have to face his full team of 6 fire types. Not only that, but this is a rotation battle which I was completely unaware of, so anything could happen in this battle. I was just gonna start a rollout chain with Bidoof, but that really didn't go according to plan since Tepig uses a Yawn. I am feeling desperate for damage, so I just use a rollout that brings Tepig to half as Tepig just uses Yawn again. Chili then rotates into Cyndaquil that hits us with a tri-attack, but for around a quarter as we stay asleep. I then rotate Pampor and use a very powerful water gun that knocks Cyndaquil to a quarter as we get hit with a very weak Flame Burst. Chili then uses a potion, but I use Fury Swipes to get Cyndaquil into range so 1 more water gun can take that thing out. Woo! 1 down. Chili then sends in his Torchic, so I rotate Butterfree to unfortunately put Tepig to sleep. Since Tepig was already hurt, this kinda backfired, but not really, since we can just hit Charmander to the red with a water gun as he sets up a Dragon Dance? Drayano, come on, man. For real? Dragon Dance in the first gym, bro? We then go for a Fury Swipes, totally wasn't a misclick, as Torchic fortunately goes for a Feather Dance. This honestly sets us up perfectly, because any mon he switches into is a dead man, so after Charmander uses his final Dragon Dance, he was the one sacrifice that goes down to 1 water gun. After the death of Charmander, now Chili sends in his Panseer. After he does this, he rotates Torchic in that gets immediately deleted by a water gun as he then sends in his Chimchar. This really isn't a big deal since he rotates into Tepig that we can just take out with another water gun. Now at this point in the battle, we have Chili kind of pinned because we can rotate Butterfree in to put them both to sleep with the sleep powder. We then use a water gun to bring Panzer to half as he just stays asleep, but then on the next turn he wakes up and uses a Protect to block our next water gun. We then hit it with a water gun that brings him to a quarter thanks to his Oranberry as he uses a very weak Incinerate. He then stalls by protecting, and then his last resort is waking up Chimchar, but to no avail, so we are able to knock both of them out with 2 more water guns. I feel like with half of our team weak to fire, my team absolutely killed that battle, which means we are able to obtain our first gym badge. After that, we have a battle that caught me quite off guard, which is the battle with Team Plasma that we barely scraped by with. Beating them means that we can train our Pokemon to their respected evolution stages, so Bidoof evolves into B-Barrel and Snivy evolves into Servine. Our next course of action is taking out Charon, but since my team is better levels than his, we sweep his whole team with just B-Barrel. After that, this little girl wants us to help her get her stolen Pokemon back, but we obviously don't care because this is the area where we can catch our next encounter, a Seedot. Not really good considering we have a grass starter that can actually learn grass moves, but we got a Seedot, yay! But at level 14, we can evolve him into a Nuzlocke. This in turn will help us defeat Team Plasma like a boss and then grant us our next encounter, a Whismur. Now up next, we have a fight against normal gym leader Lenora, and as y'all may see, I am at a huge disadvantage. Her first two Pokemon she sends out not only have Intimidate, but her Bouffalant has Zap Zipper as its ability, so no grass moves can hit this thing. I did spend a lot of time trying to pull a half-ass plan together, and this is what I got. They send out Stantler and Herdier as I lead with Butterfree and Servine. Now what you will see most of this battle is Butterfree is there to keep both of her Pokemon to sleep with Sleep Powder as we set up with Leech Seed and Growth with Servine. And for the most part, after that, everything kinda goes according to plan. Leech Seed gives Servine enough recovery to survive the first bit, and then we get the +4 special attack with Growth. After feeling comfortable enough to attack, I take out the Stantler with a Confusion as Servine gets to +5 with Growth and Herdier just uses a Charm lowering our physical attack. Now, there is a big elephant in the room, or should I say buffalo. Lenora fortunately goes for a super potion on Herdier, which means that we can poison the Bouffalant with poison powder. The Bouffalant fortunately misses a Rock Tomb on Butterfree, which means that we can bring it to half with a crit from Hidden Power. Realizing Butterfree's life is in the hands of a Rock Tomb, I switch into B-Barrel to tank an Aerial Ace as we use a Hidden Power on Bouffalant to bring it to 1 HP. We then get hit with a Retaliate from Herdier to half, but then fortunately the poison damage can end the reign of that buffalo. Furret is up next, so I switch into Pampor as we one-hit KO Furret with a Leaf Tornado. This in a way is a 2-step forward, 1-step backward process because then Herdier hits us with a Retaliate to 4 HP in the red. Up next is his Watchog and he outspeeds with a Retaliate to end Servine's claim to victory. We at least got the Bite Flinch though, that kinda helped out. But this thing gives us an opportunity to switch out Butterfree. Pampor, making me proud, somehow survives a Helping Hand boosted Crunch on 16 HP as we put Watchog to sleep and hit it with Bite. While Watchog is snoozing, I make the effort to switch in our new Machop as Herdier just goes for a Helping Hand. This is great, so now we can put Herdier to sleep as well. Herdier and Watchog stay asleep for this turn, so we can target Watchog with a Confusion Karate Chop combo to bring it to over half. Watchog actually wakes up, but fortunately hitting himself in Confusion as we destroy it with another Confusion Karate Chop combo. His second to last Pokemon is a B-Barrel, and seeing that Herdier wakes up and uses Helping Hand, I clearly made a huge mistake. I misclicked and used Confusion instead of Sleep Powder on B-Barrel, which means that my poor Butterfree goes down to one final Aqua Tail. This in a way ends up being kind of a trade-off because we end up KOing B-Barrel with a low kick. I then just sit in Loudron, and after tanking a Retaliate on 10 HP in the red, we can finally KO the Herdier for our second gym badge of the run. As Team Plasma steals the Dragonite Skull, Lenora's husband just completely does not give a fuck.
Imagine shooting a man with your last bullet, and he stands there, unfazed.
This means that we can pick up our next encounter in the Pinwheel Forest, a Bellsprout that we can immediately evolve into a Weepinbell. After that, then we wreck Team Plasma and give back the Dragonite Skull and obtain some useless Moonstones. This means that we can take the Sky Arrow Bridge to make it to Castelia City. While we are there, we are able to pick up the Water Stone from this researcher and immediately evolve Pampor into Simipour. The evolutions don't stop there because while we were fighting Team Plasma, we were able to evolve Machop into a Machoke. My team still needs a lot of work done to it considering that we have Bugsy coming up, so I go to Route 4 where we can find ourselves a Vullaby. This thing might help us, but its dark typing is really crippling the reason it would be a good matchup for the up and coming gym. Now up next is Burgh and his bug types, and looking at his team, victory looks impossible. And the best thing that we have is a Vullaby. Up until this point in the game, there are no rock and flying TMs that you can find anywhere. Trust me, I have looked, and so I have to go into this battle knowing that my strategy might not work. but let's get it. Burgh sends out Masquerain and Vespiquen as I lead with Simipour and Weepinbell. We then start the battle by using Scald on Vespiquen to bring it to half as Masquerain hits both my Mons with an Icy Wind. This also lowers our speed, but Weepinbell gets off his Sleep Powder before it absolutely gets annihilated by an Acrobatics. Not a good look losing him on this early, but it is what it is. We next send out B-Barrel, and then we hit the Masquerain to half with a Scald, and we hit the Vespiquen with a rollout to a quarter as it U-turns into Leavanny. Leavanny, being a grass type, absolutely destroys B-Barrel with a Leaf Blade as we hit the Masquerain with a Scald to the red. It then wakes up and uses Silver Wind, but fortunately no Omni Boost. I send out Vullaby, and Burgh really wants us to suffer here, so he goes for a Hyper Potion and then completely disintegrates our Simipour with a Leaf Blade. But we end up getting off a 4-time super effective Pluck on Leavanny, and we steal its Citrus Berry. I just go ahead and send out Louddrain that tanks a Leaf Blade and Icy Wind combo on 10 HP, but we are able to KO Leavanny and confuse the Masquerain with Supersonic. Burgh then sends in Heracross. Chat, we are so cooked. It goes for an Aerial Ace, taking out our Louddrain. Nice. Masquerain then uses Scald, but no burn, so we can take Heracross deep into the red with a Pluck as we send out our second to last Pokemon, Machoke. Heracross uses Bug Bite to bring Vullaby into the red, and then Masquerain hits its Icy Wind to completely take out our only hope for this battle. We can at least take out the Heracross with a Retaliate, but this battle is pretty much over when Burgh sends out Yanmega. Yanmega hits us with an Air Slash, and somehow Machoke survives it on 9 HP. That was kind of crazy, but then Masquerain paralyzes us with a Stun Spore, and we stay paralyzed. Well, y'all, that is it. With one final Air Slash, that was the end of attempt 2. But I am not giving up, and I will conquer this game. Drayano will not have the dub over me, which is why I will be pursuing attempt 3.
Oh, hell no, man.
Now that we are back to square one, I am for sure switching up my starter choice, so I go for Tepig. And you know what? With Legend ZA coming out, I am so tired of seeing the Tepig slander. Yes, Emboar stats suck, but look at this man. We then head over to Route 2, and we find one of the most amazing encounters we could have possibly have found in Starly. We now finally have a way to intimidate opposing Pokemon. Now, in this go-around was a lot easier, considering that our typings and stats are a lot better this go-around. So basically, I just sent Tepig out there to steamroll his whole team with a flurry of embers. We catch a Weedle on Route 3, and then we evolve her into a Kakuna, followed by a Beedrill. We then pick up our Elemental Monkey in Pansage, and then evolve Starly into Staravia, and now it is time to start the track back to the Elite Four by facing Crest, the Water Gym. He starts the battle by sending out Oshawott, Totodile, and Squirtle as I lead with Beedrill, Staravia, and Pansage. Now, while I was battling him, I was kind of mind blown by this AI. For whatever reason, he did not use a single ice move. Mudkip has Ice Ball and Piplup has Icy Wind, and for whatever reason, they just didn't go for it. All in all, this battle was really straightforward, and I wing attacked my way through the first half of his team while Pansage cleaned up the last half with Vine Whip. This gives us a surprisingly easy win and our first gym badge of the run. When we were battling Team Plasma in the Dream Yard, the battle was super close, but unfortunately, I had to let go of Beedrill to get a free switch into Staravia to clean up the battle. Oh no, what will I do without my dear old pal Beedrill? The game finally starts to gain some traction again by us evolving our starter into a Pignite. We then have to battle Charon, but come on, guys, Charon doesn't have that dog in him. But you know who does? Our sponsor, me. I am the sponsor. YouTube, please pay me. We eventually, though, get our daily dose of serotonin because our next encounters couldn't have been better. We end up catching a Shinx on Route 3, and eventually we evolve him into a Luxio. After that, we hit up the Wellspring Cave to get ourselves none other than a Zubat, another great mom for Burgh. We talk to the little girl whose Pokemon we save, and she gives us a fishing rod, and using 100% of my brain, I realize there is a pond in Striaton City. If we end up fishing there, we will net us none other than a Slowpoke. And finally, when we get to Nacrene City, we can round out our full team of 6 by catching us a Machop. Now with Lenora, we have to use a different strat, but now we have Double Intimidate, so let the games begin. We get our Double Intimidate in, and then we end up pivoting into Pansage and Pignite to eat an extra sensory and a charm. With some EV investment, Pansage can outspeed with the Leech Seed on Stantler and can tank the Retaliate on 15 HP. Herdier also uses retaliate, but it doesn't do much, and we can bring it to the red with an arm thrust. Knowing Lenora is going to burn a super potion, I use Leech Seed on Herdier as Stantler brings us to 7 HP with a retaliate. Big Knight then goes for a flame charge that surprisingly crits, so we bring Stantler into range where we can KO it with the Leech Seed recovery. She next sends in Bouffalon, and I, of course, on its helping hand turn, boost its attack with Leech Seed. That 200 IQ move plus a 2-hit with Arm Thrust means that Pansage absolutely gets destroyed by an Aerial Ace. I then send in Luxio for Intimidate, and then we hit Bouffalon surprisingly with a 4-hit with Arm Thrust, so that puts Bouffalon in range of a Spark to finally KO that thing. She next sends out B-Barrel, but we did him dirty with an Arm Thrust Spark combo to 1-hit KO that thing. We did get hit to half with Retaliate, but Lenora ends up sending in her Furret. Furret gets destroyed by an abundance of Arm Thrust to take care of her, and then we knock the Herdier deep into the red with a Spark. She next sends out Watchhog, and I honestly was blown away by this thing. I switched out into Staravia to get off an Intimidate, and the combination of Helping Hand and double-powered Retaliate, our poor Luxio goes down like a champ. I did not account for the Helping Hand boost, and when I ran the calcs, I did them without the boost, and that just costed me my Intimidate Pokemon. This does give us a free switch into Karate Man, and I switch into our tankiest bet, Slowpoke. Karate Man then survives the Helping Hand Retaliate, and then ends up knocking Watchhog to half with Karate Chop. This ends up burning its Citrus Berry, and finally Herdier goes down to the Leech Seed. I then do an unintentionally smart thing and switch out into Staravia to Intimidate and tank the Crunch that probably would have killed Slowpoke. And since Lenora burned her super potion at the beginning of the battle, a Karate Chop quick attack combo just sealed the deal on us getting our second gym badge of the run. We then hit up the Pinwheel Forest for our next encounter, and it ends up being an Execute. Not bad, but definitely will not be helpful with the up and coming gym. At the end of Pinwheel, we end up finding some King's Rock on the ground, and for the first time in my life, I evolve Slowpoke into a magnificent Slow King. We then hit up Route 4 where we can catch ourselves the best encounter ever, a Darumaka. We also pick up the Eviolite, and while I was traversing through Route 4, I found a Skull Fossil that I revived from the dead into a Craniados. This thing has no rock moves though, like come on bruh. But I might have a plan for this dude when challenging Burgh. The time has come. We finally made it back to where we started. Bruh. I trained my team in defense and speed, so let's hope that gets us through Burgh and his bug types. Burgh sends out Vespiquen and Masquerain as I lead with Machoke and Staravia. We start by getting an Intimidate off with Staravia as Masquerain does the same to us. I then switch into Pig Knight as Masquerain hits us for not much and lowers our speed with Icy Wind while Machoke uses Focus Energy. But Vespiquen hits him deep into the yellow with an Acrobatics that is not good. Pig Knight then gets hit with a Stun Spore to paralyze, beautiful, as he also stays paralyzed this turn, which means Machoke goes down to an Acrobatics from Vespiquen. However, I thought I was fully paralyzed, but I guess I'm not, so Masquerain goes down to 1 Flame Charge. Alright. Now Machoke was always a sack because I needed to get out Darumaka holding the Eviolite. Seeing how Burgh has 2 flying types out, I switch out into Rampardos, and thank God I did because both of the bug Pokemon target him, only leaving him at 20 HP. We are then only able to retaliate with a hustle boosted Fire Punch to 1-hit KO Yanmega. Burgh next sends out Leavanny, and from here on out, y'all are about to watch some of the most insane luck you have ever seen. Leavanny, for whatever reason, uses Leaf Blade on Darumaka, okay, as we use Endeavor on Vespiquen, bringing it deep into the yellow. Vespiquen also toxics Darumaka, but this gives Darumaka enough HP to take out Leavanny with a 4x super effective Fire Punch. Burgh next sends out Scolipede, and knowing Burgh is in range of a Hyper Potion with Vespiquen, I stay in with Darumaka to tank the Rock Climb, and then an Endeavor Fire Punch combo is enough to KO him as well. Heracross is up next, so I switch out into Staravia to get off an attack drop and to tank an Aerial Ace from Heracross. This goes in our favor as we Endeavor the Heracross deep into the yellow, and Vespiquen targets Staravia with an Acrobatics to 25 HP. I then switch into Golbat to tank a Guts boosted Night Slash so we can take out Heracross with the Chip Away. Vespiquen then uses a very weak U-turn on Golbat, but that doesn't matter, so we can confuse it with Confuse Ray and then hit it low with Endeavor while it stays confused. Playing it safe, I switch into Pig Knight to watch as Vespiquen goes down to a super effective wing attack. I was completely mind blown at how this battle just went down. For whatever reason, the AI just did not attack my Rampardos at all when it was deep into the red. But I am not going to argue with it at all because we just earned our 3rd gym badge of the run. Now up next, we have a battle with Charon, and honestly, the battle felt pretty even up until we got to Dewat. Dewat has a ton of moves that completely counter my team, and it completely slipped my mind that this thing has revenge. And so, my poor Rampardos had to take one for the team so we could continue the run. This at least got him in range of a quick attack from Staravia. We are finally able to get to the desert resort where we can catch ourselves none other than the GOAT Dwebble. And honestly, I feel like we catch this thing almost every single run that we do. It's honestly hilarious. We can now start the evolution grind as well since the level cap has been raised to 38, so we can evolve Staravia into Staraptor and Darumaka into Darmanitan. We then head over to Route 16 where we can catch ourselves a Spoink, kinda mid, and then we catch ourselves an even more mid Pokemon in Pichu in the Lost Lord Forest. Pichu might have been helpful somewhat, but it doesn't have an attacking move at all. We then start our friendship grind, which means running around like a madman, and then we have the biggest evolutionary haul we have ever had. We evolve Golbat into Crobat, Pichu into Pikachu, Spoink into Grumpig, and Dwebble into Rock Crab. We also can't forget our starter that finally has reached his final form in Emboar. Now, Elisa's team is very speedy, but is frail in the defense department. She has one gimmick everyone knows about, which is her paralysis shenanigans. I have one Cherry Berry up until this point in the game, which means that we gotta pray to the RNG gods to get us through this battle. I've done everything I can do, and now it is go time. It's time to take on Elisa and her electric types. She sends out Amalga as I lead with Crustle, and on the first turn, Amalga U-turns into Ampharos as I set up the Stealth Rock. Knowing this thing is a Cotton Guarding maniac, I switch into Executor as it uses Cotton Guard. Yay! It now proceeds to use another Cotton Guard to get to +6 defense as I set up the light screen, boosting our special defense. Ampharos is clearly wanting to be as stacked as the Great Wall of China right now, using a charge as we land the Leech Seed, slowly chipping this thing's HP away. Ampharos not giving in still proceeds with charge as we start racking damage with Confusion. Ampharos is now at +3 special defense, and I get the brilliant idea to use Birdo's body for science and use Wood Hammer that does practically nothing. And on top of that awful calculation, Birdo gets paralyzed due to using a contact move. Great. This just turns into a large back and forth with us getting Ampharos into the red, and then Elisa uses a Hyper Potion. I then set up another light screen, and as I'm hacking away at this thing's HP, I realize there is a way better way to take this thing out. I end up switching into Darmanitan to tank a Thunderbolt very well because of light screen and Leech Seed, and then we maximize our attack stat with Belly Drum while the Ampharos goes for charge. This is great for 2 reasons. We can use Dig to go underground and get more Leech Seed recovery, and then blast this thing on the next turn with a super effective hit, taking him out. She next sends in Raichu that uses a Volt Switch to bring us to 34 HP as she switches into Galvantula as we go underground. Galvantula did her best, dropping a fat Thunder that fatly missed, so we take her out with another Dig. She now sends back out Raichu, and with Darmanitan being in range of a Volt Switch, I switch out into Executor to tank the resisted hit. She then sends back out Amalga, and now that I know her strat, I switch into Emboar to tank the resisted U-turn. She then does the same dance, sending back out Raichu, as Raichu goes for another Volt Switch, sending back out Amalga. But what Amalga doesn't know is that we are going to absolutely crush it with a super powered Heat Crash that does leave us paralyzed, but I am glad to get Amalga off the field. She then sends back out Raichu that Volt switches into Manectric, but he also goes down to a Heat Crash as well. She now sends back out Raichu, and thinking she's going for a Volt Switch, I switch into Pikachu, but unfortunately she was faced with a Focus Mist straight to the face. I was going to use Light Screen, but Raichu somehow lands a second Focus Blast in a row. We might just have a world record. I just send in Crustle as Raichu lands a third Focus Blast, knocking us to 41 HP as we finally can take it out with a Dig, but we get paralyzed again. Elisa now sends in her last Pokemon, Zebstrika. Zebstrika hits us with a Volt Switch to 1 HP as we stay paralyzed. I then switch into Executor that can tank the resisted Volt Switch, followed up by a Flame Charge on 18 HP, and fortunately we get off the Leech Seed. We then send in Prince Flow as we tank a flame charge very well, getting our health back to full with Leech Seed. Zepstrika then goes for a powerful wild charge, bringing us to over half as he eats his citrus berry, and we confuse him with Confuse Ray. This is it. If Zepstrika doesn't stay confused, we lose the run. Zepstrika actually hits us, but we survive on 1 HP and can deliver a powerful Psy Shock to win the battle. Against all odds, Grumpig did the impossible, and I can't believe we made it through, but this finally gives us our 4th gym badge of the run. We then have to go against Charon immediately after our gym battle. He starts the battle by sending in Staraptor as I lead with Crustle. Now, Crustle does take a neutral close combat to half, but this does give me a chance to set up the Stealth Rock. We do get hit to 28 HP with another close combat, and Crustle misses his Rock Slide. I then just switch in Slowking as we get Whirlwinded, but it just sends out Darmanitan. This is great, because after taking a close combat, we can take Staraptor out with the Flare Blitz. He next sends out Gigalith, and knowing Darmanitan is a dead man to any of his moves, I switch into Executor to tank the Smackdown to half. We then use Woodhammer that brings Gigalith deep into the red as he sets up a Stealth Rock. But wasting no time, we take him out with one more Confusion. Up next is Samurott, so I switch Slowking into the incoming Slash. He hits me with a Slash once more to below half as I use a Nasty Plot boosting my special attack. Now, I'm honestly banking on a Water Pulse Confusion here, but we don't get it, and we get hit by a Revenge crit to 11 HP in the red. I then just send in Staraptor to tank an Aqua Jet on the way in, and then we hit a close combat that brings Samurott to half thanks to his Citrus Berry, and then we get hit by a Slash to 45 HP. Now, at this point, I can't afford to lose Staraptor, nor can I get any more defensive drops, so I use Aerial Ace that brings him to a quarter as he uses Slash, but fortunately no crit, so we can take him out with one more Aerial Ace. His second to last Pokemon is Alakazam, so I switch into Executor as he weirdly goes for a Recover. Now, my only shot at winning this battle is setting up with Light Screen, and fortunately Alakazam just lets me do just that by using Telekinesis. This means that we can tank the Side Beam, but we miss Leech Seed. We then take another one on 4 HP, but we do get off the Leech Seed. I then switch into my last full health Mon, Embor, that gets in on a free switch due to Telekinesis. Alakazam uses Side Beam, and if it crits, it's over. But fortunately, that doesn't happen, and we can take it out with a Flame Charge Leech Seed combo. He now sends in his last Pokemon, Simisage, and with a desperate attempt to paralyze me with Lick, we destroy him with a super-powered Heat Crash, giving us the dub over Charon. Elisa then tells the man to drop the drawbridge pause, but this bridge will allow us to access a great Pokemon for the next gym, a Wingull. Expert Belt! Now, in the base games, you usually don't have a fishing rod, or at least in my experience, you never have one. But in this case, you do, so I catch my Driftveil encounter in Mantike. This thing is gonna be switch out bait because we literally can't even evolve him. Sorry, Mantike lovers. Now, traversing through the cold storage, we are now in a predicament because we ran into a patch of grass where 2 Pokemon appear. The Pokemon were Herdier and Sneasel, and now Herdier does have Intimidate, which is very essential, but I want Sneasel because of its Dark and Ice typing, and it is the most speedy Mon in the whole game. Charon and I then ambush Team Plasma's No Love challenge, and then quickly get them arrested for public nudity. After that poetic symphony, we head to Route 6 where we can catch ourselves a Cherubi. And after exercising a love challenge on them, we can evolve Cherubi into Cherum and evolve Wingull into Pelipper. That means it's finally time to take on Clay, the ground-type gym leader. He sends out Hippowdon as I lead with Executor. We both start the battle by setting up a Leech Seed as he sets up with Stealth Rock. I then set up a Reflect as Hippowdon just hits me with Chip and lowers our speed with a Bulldoze. This is completely fine because we are all set up to switch into Cherum, and even more set up when Hippowdon misses his Stone Edge. This then gives us the edge to set up with a Sunny Day to activate Flower Gift as Hippowdon just uses Slack Off, getting back up to full health. Why all that setup, you may ask? And it's because we can unleash a super effective Solar Beam that leaves Hippowdon at like 1 HP, and then he lowers our speed with a Bulldoze. This is kind of half good, half bad, as he also falls to the Leech Seed recovery. He next sends in Seismitoad that does outspeed due to the Bulldoze drop, and he hits us to half with a Sludge Wave, but this means that we can in turn destroy it with a 4 times super effective Solar Beam. He next sends in Excadrill, and knowing Cherrim can't take any of the moves this thing has, I switch into Mantike that goes down to an X-Scissor Rock Slide combo. This does mean that I can switch into Exeggutor, which I am now screaming at myself, why am I doing that? Because he gets outsped and dies to a 4-time super effective X-Scissor. I want to give myself the benefit of the doubt. Hopefully I was trying to set up Reflect, but who knows. I then send out Slowking, and then Excadrill uses Swords Dance, and I hit a Scald, and it gets the burn. Alright. This does mean that we can tank his X-Scissor on 17 HP and then finish him off with another Scald. His second to last Pokemon is Krokorok, and I am still kicking myself not switching into Pelipper because that could have saved my dear Slowking's life from an earthquake. Rest in peace, brother. I then do what I should have did beforehand in sending in Pelipper. Crunch hits us to a quarter as Crocodile gets hit to about the same range with a Scald, but we get another burn. Oh my god. Clay then uses a Hyper Potion to get back to full health as we use a Roost to get back some HP. Crocodile then uses a Torment, but this sparks a very last minute plan that I think is gonna get us the win. See, because of Torment, we can't use the same moves in repetition, so I was alternating between Stockpile to boost my defenses and Roost to heal. This not only gives us enough health and defense to survive the Krokorok, but every single one of his other Pokemon after goes down to the wrath of Pelipper. Frankly, that was a decently hard gym, and I could have planned a little bit better considering I lost half my team, but still, we made it through to get our 5th gym badge. After the gym challenge, we evolve Sneasel into a Weavile, and then we get to the front of the Chargestone Cave where Clay's Krokorok gives the entrance a side and a Puma. Wait, weren't you like a crocodile a minute ago? This means that we can enter the cave and pick up an awesome encounter in Clink. We then hit up the Celestial Tower where we can catch ourselves a Litwick, and then after that, we evolve Clink into Clang, and then Clang into Clink Clang. This will now segue us into a battle that I have been fearing Skyla in her flying types. And not only that, people, it is a triple battle, so pray for me. She sends out Braviary, Skarmory, and Mandibuzz as I lead with Weavile, Pachirisu, and Crustle. Now, off the rip, I am setting up, and I get off a Reflect with Weavile and Thunder Wave the Braviary that does leave it paralyzed, as Mandibuzz sets up Tailwind, and this just leaves Skarmory and Crustle to set up with Spikes and Stealth Rock. Knowing Braviary has superpower, I switch into Darmanitan as Mandibuzz uses a Torment on Pachirisu. Skarmory then spreads more of its spikes as we Thunderwave the Mandibuzz and Crustle can get off a Shell Smash. But Braviary does not stay paralyzed this turn and gets off a Rock Slide to hit Darmanitan and Pachirisu. Skarmory then sets up its third layer of spikes as we Volt Switch into Skarmory, bringing it deep into the yellow, and this means that we can switch into our Steel type, Kling Clang. Of course Skarmory dodges the Rock Slide, but this does bring Mandibuzz into the yellow as well, and we can take out the Skarmory with one final Flare Blitz. But this is not over because Mandibuzz uses Torment on Crustle as Darmanitan goes down to one final Rock Slide. Rest in peace, homie. Skyla then sends in a huge threat, Archeops, as I send in Pelipper. Skyla of course goes for a Hyper Potion on Mandibuzz as Crustle dodges a Stone Edge so we can bring Mandibuzz back to half with an X-Scissor. Clink Clang then Volt Switches into Archeops, bringing it to a quarter as we switch into Pachirisu, and then Pelipper can outspeed and take out the Archeops with the Scald. But then I see my life literally flash before my eyes as I see Braviary bulk up. And not only that, she sends out Gliscor. We then use an Electro Ball that brings Braviary to half thanks to its Citrus Berry, and then Crustle can outspeed with a Rock Slide that takes out Mandibuzz and brings Gliscor to exactly half. And this unfortunately means that Pachirisu has to take one for the team, going down to an Earthquake because our next Scald from Pelipper takes out our second biggest threat, Gliscor. Pelipper does also have to tank a Rock Slide but survives on a quarter. This means that we send out Weavile as Skyla sends out Swanna. Weavile outspeeds, setting up Reflect as Crustle unfortunately goes down to a double-powered Brine, but we do get off a Roost on Pelipper, which lets us survive a Brave Bird from Braviary. This means that we send out our last living Pokemon, Kling Clang. Now right here, I have never been more confused in my life. We do hit the Night Slash on Swanna, but somehow being on the other end of the field, she hits Pelipper with a Hurricane. Make that make sense. So unfortunately, we do end up losing Pelipper to that Hurricane, but this does mean that we can take out Swanna with a Volt Switch as Braviary stays paralyzed. And after that, Braviary stays paralyzed, so 2 consecutive Night Slashes gives us the dub over Skyla and earns us a hard-fought 6th gym badge. Now up next, we have a rotation battle with Charon, and things were going smooth until I switch our beloved starter into a Brave Birding Staraptor. I'm just gonna tell y'all right now, rotation battles are super random, and you can never really plan these out, you just have to kind of f around and find out. We do end up beating Charon, but at what cost, bruh? And before the Ice Gym, come on. Wait, no, he's coming to sniff our feet. We then end up catching a few more encounters in Apom, Girder, and Mifu, and then we evolve them into their respected evolutions. For whatever reason, I didn't record any of the other evolutions, so here is Ambipoms. We then hit up Route 8, where we can catch ourselves a Stunfisk. I mean, the bad encounters we're gonna catch up eventually. Now up next is Bryson, the 7th gym leader, and in the base games, he's kind of a pushover, but in these games, he still kinda is. He sends out Glaceon and Abomasnow as I lead with Mienshao and Weavile. Now Bryson's strat is Snow Warning plus a billion blizzards, but we have a way to at least get around the Snow Warning. For whatever reason, Weavile can learn Sunny Day. We go ahead and set that up as Mienshao gets hit with a hidden power to half, but we do pick up the 1-hit KO with Drain Punch on Abomasnow and get back to full HP. We are now in a great position against Frostlass because we can 1-hit KO it with the Night Slash and then reverse the damage dealt from Glaceon with the Drain Punch. Up next is Vanillix, and while Bryson Hyper Potions Glaceon, I switch into Klinklang and then hit Glaceon with a powerful Drain Punch. This of course gets reversed because Vanillix hits its Blizzard that brings Mienshao into the red. I absolutely forgot that Glaceon outspeeds, so Mienshao goes down to a hidden power. But Vanillix does miss its Blizzard, so we end up getting a Gear Grind off, taking out the Glaceon. I then switch into Conkeldurr as Bryson sends out Beartick. Vanillix does merely get off an Icy Wind as we take out Beartick with a Gear Grind, and Vanillix goes down to one final superpower. This just leaves Bryson's Cryogonal, but this thing has paper-thin defenses, so after switching into Iggy, one final Gear Grind takes him out for the 7th gym badge of the run. After that, then we head over to the Dragon Spiral Tower where we can net ourselves a Baltoy. We then are running to the stairs when all of a sudden,
Cause it's about to be some turbulence.
Now I have not been putting in the Bianca battles mainly because they have been a sweet fest, but this battle right here might prove why Bianca shouldn't be taken lightly. She sends out Persian, Musharna, and Mienshao as I lead with Lampet, Staraptor, and Claydol. Persian starts the battle by nasty plotting, boosting its special attack as Mienshao attacks Lampet with Stone Edge. We finally retaliate by hitting Musharna to half with a U-turn and then switch into Klinklang as Claydol sets up our defense with Reflect. Lampet then hits Mienshao with a powerful Psychic and it brings him to the red. This is then followed up by Musharna that hits Claydol with an Energy Ball to half. Bianca then full restores Mienshao as Persian then boosts its special attack again with Nasty Plot. This is fine because we can get the KO over Musharna with another Gear Grind, and then Claydol sets up our special defense with a Light Screen. We also hit Mienshao back to the red with another Psychic, and then this brings out her next Pokemon, Simipour, in the rain. Claydol has done his job, so I switch into Conkeldurr as Persian uses Hypnosis, but he misses. However, Mienshao does not miss his high jump kick, bringing Klinklang to around half. And unfortunately, Simipour does hit his Hydro Pump on Lampet that ends his reign of glory. But this does give us an opportunity to Volt Switch the Simipour to half. I then switch into Stunfisk and Staraptor, and then we end up taking out the Mienshao with a quick attack. Persian then retaliates by hitting Stunfisk and Conkeldurr with a Swift, and somehow, Conkeldurr also survives the incoming Hydro Pump in the red. This means that Conkeldurr is going to deliver Persian a very fatal blow to the face with a superpower. Not only that, but Simipour also goes down to Stunfisk's Thunderbolt. This just leaves us with Bianca's Superior and Chandelure. Conkeldurr can't stay in, so I switch into Claydol that tanks the incoming Leaf Blade to the red. Staraptor then takes Chandelure deep into the yellow with a Brave Bird as Claydol somehow survives the other incoming flamethrower. This all happens while Stunfisk then shoots himself in the air with a bounce. I then switch Claydol for Klinklang that takes very little damage from the Leaf Blade on the way in. Staraptor then finally takes out the Chandelure with a Brave Bird, and that means that Stunfisk can hit his bounce, but more importantly, it paralyzes the Superior. With Superior in a corner, I shift Staraptor in for Stunfisk as Superior paralyzes Klinklang with a Glare. This then puts Staraptor in position to finish up the battle with one final Brave Bird. That battle was honestly insane, and I am so proud of how my Pokemon held their own. This then progresses us to Route 9, where we can catch ourselves a Kirlia, but not just any Kirlia, a male one. This means that we can evolve Kirlia into Gallade with the Dawnstones that we found near Route 15. I then hit up Route 10 for my encounter, and dear God, it's Diaper Bird. As soon as we start grinding levels on it, Vullaby evolves into its majestic counterpart, Mandibuzz. Now, Drayden's team has a ton of bruisers on it, and not only that, this is a rotation battle. My team honestly is upgraded tremendously, so let's see how we fare versus Drayden and his dragon types. He sends out Flygon, Charizard, and Druddigon as I lead with Weavile, Staraptor, and Claydol. I start the battle by rotating Weavile in to set up the Reflect as Druddigon hits us with a very weak Outrage. Knowing Claydol has more in the defense department, I rotate into him, and Druddigon and I are going blow for blow with Ice Beam and Outrage. I use Ice Beam, bringing Druddigon to the red as he hits another weak Outrage, but he becomes confused. Since Drayden Hyper Potion's here, I take the turn to U-turn with Staraptor, then pivot into Stunfisk. I then rotate into Weavile as Drayden does with Flygon, and then we hit it with a 4x super effective Ice Beam to a quarter thanks to its Yache Berry. Flygon then goes ahead and sets up Tailwind, boosting his team's speed. We then rotate into Claydol that gets hit to over half with the Dragon Pulse as we set up a Reflect. This is great because when Charizard hits his Fire Punch, it's not going to do much as we set up the Light Screen. Now right here, something genuinely beautiful happens. Here I rotate into Stunfisk as Charizard halves his HP with Belly Drum. This means that Stunfisk can drop a fat Thunderbolt on this dude's head for the KO. Drayden then sends out Salamence, and then we rotate into Weavile to deliver a powerful Ice Beam to destroy his Flygon. Drayden next sends in Kingdra, and so I switch Stunfisk into a Waterfall and then hit Kingdra to around half with a Thunderbolt. He next rotates into Salamence that breaks our Light Screen, but then we land our Thunderbolt and we bring him to half. We also get the Paralysis. This is awesome because Salamence is basically benched for the rest of the fight. We then rotate into Weavile as he does with Druddigon, and then we bring him to the red with an Ice Beam as Druddigon misses a Dragon Tail. And then Drayden basically gives up by letting us take out his Druddigon with one more Ice Beam. His next Pokemon is Haxorus, and knowing we have all physical attackers on the field, I set up Reflect as Kingdra hits us to below half with an Outrage. Knowing he is locked into Outrage, I feel more comfortable taking a risk with Stunfisk and taking a Outrage to the red and doing more chip with Thunderbolt. I then switch into Gallade that has to tank a Draco Meteor on the switch. Drayden then switches into Haxorus as we hit him to above half with a Psycho Cut, and somehow Gallade survives the Outrage on like 1 HP. There is no way I can play on the defensive. I have to go all in, and fortunately we can take out Haxorus with one more Ice Beam. The same story happens to his Salamence, and all we are left with is his Kingdra. And so I switch into Gallade to deliver one final blow with Psycho Cut to give us a deathless 8th gym badge. We absolutely killed that battle, and let's just hope we can continue that streak through Victory Road. Now we do have one final fight with Charon, but honestly this one was just pure annoyance. He sends out Staraptor as I lead with Stunfisk, and on the first turn Staraptor ends up U-turning, switching into Gigalith. I had a feeling he would be compelled to do so considering that Stunfisk is an electric type, so a Surf brings Gigalith down to a quarter. And after that, one more Surf is enough to clean up the job. Next up is this Samurai, and he just goes for a Swords Dance as we one-hit KO him with an Expert Belt boosted Thunderbolt. Let's get it. His next Pokemon is Alakazam, so I switch into Mandibuzz to tank the incoming Energy Ball. We clearly took no damage from that Energy Ball, but that Focus Blast sure did bring us to half as we hit it with a Snarl. Now, I needed Alakazam's attack to be dropped just in case we can survive a non-crit, but he just misses anyways, so we can set up the Tailwind. This in turn means that we can demolish him with the Dark Pulse, bringing in his next Pokemon, Simisear. I tried to outspeed with Snarl, but we missed, and then Simisear hits a full-powered overheat to 32 HP. Very surprised we survived that. I switch into our tank, Claydol, to tank the next overheat very well. Simisear then feels very inclined to just set up workups, and that makes me very happy because I can just set up Reflect and Light Screen for free. He then feels the need to set up another workup as we bring him to the red with an Earth Power. This is totally cool because Greed won the mental battle over Simisear, so one more Earth Power does the job. Next up is his Staraptor, and he hits a very lethal blow with Brave Bird as we hit an Ice Beam, and y'all boys, we get the freeze. I am telling y'all right now, in this moment, I thought I had it made. One more Ice Beam kills off the Staraptor, but this is where the real trouble begins when he sends in his Whimsicott. I am telling y'all, my biggest flaw in planning this battle was clearly diving into the research of Whimsicott. This thing not only has the Prankster ability, giving it priority status moves, but it also is a speed demon. And by the way, just look at that moveset, like that is god awful. My best course of action is to basically just let him set up and knock himself out with his substitute, and maybe, just maybe, we get a lucky crit. Now he does go for the sub and we end up breaking it with Gear Grind, but everything falls apart the moment that he uses Leech Seed. This rise and fall method of him gaining more recovery than we can deal, or better more, to himself, we are pretty much gambling on luck. He does bring himself to half with a substitute, but with no progress, I just switch into Staraptor as Whimsicott sets up another substitute. Whimsicott then hits us with a Hurricane for not much as we break its sub with a full-powered Brave Bird. We then get hit with another Hurricane to half, and then we get confused, and I am on the edge of my seat. All I need is Staraptor to hit this Brave Bird.
We gotta drop the load!
Okay, well that sucks. After making like 4 switches, we finally make it to my last full health Mon, Gallade. Gallade gets hit with a Hurricane, knocking him for not much because of Claydol setting up a last second light screen as we break its sub with a Psycho Cut. My boy Gallade at the end of the day is the main character though, with one final Stone Edge that not only lands but crits, we can end Charon and for a matter of fact all of the rival battles for that matter, taking home the dub. We now have finally climbed our way through Victory Road into the Pokemon League. And we have some encounters that we have missed out on. On Route 17, we end up finding ourselves a very underwhelming Wailmer, but when we are traversing through the Mistral Cave, we end up finding ourselves a Bagon. Let's get it. We end up evolving him into a Sheldon, and then we evolve him into the beast itself, Salamence. And after leveling up to the level cap and picking up any remaining items or TMs we missed, this will be the team I take on the Elite Four with. We have Staraptor with Close Combat, U-Turn, Brave Bird, and Quick Attack. Klinklang with Gear Grind, Volt Switch, Thunderbolt, and Shift Gear. Claydol with Earth Power, Psychic, Reflect, and Light Screen. Salamence with Flamethrower, Dragon Claw, Earthquake, and Crunch. Weavile with Night Slash, Brick Break, Reflect, and Ice Beam. And last but not least, we have Mandibuzz with Tailwind, Air Slash, Dark Pulse, and Snarl. Now up first, I decided to fight Chantal and her ghost types. She sends out her Driplim and Golurk as I lead with Mandibuzz and Claydol. Now off the rip, we outspeed setting up Tailwind and Light Screen as both of Chantal's Pokemon focus Claydol, but Claydol survives on 22 HP. That was straight up not a vibe, so I switch into Salamence as we outspeed to hit Golurk with the Dark Pulse that crits, giving us the one-hit KO as Driplim hits a very weak Shadow Ball. This now will bring in Frostlass, so I switch into Weavile as we nearly KO Frostlass with the Dark Pulse. Frostlass then hits a Blizzard, but it doesn't do much since Light Screen is up, and the same goes for the incoming Shadow Ball. Chantal then full restores Frostlass as we hit Driplim with a Night Slash, bringing her deep into the red. The same thing happens to Frostlass as we hit it with a Dark Pulse, and then Driplim hits a Thunderbolt, bringing Mandibuzz nearly to a quarter. But my Dark types are all set up, and they don't have a problem destroying both of them with a final Night Slash and Dark Pulse. Up next, we have Jellicent and Mismagius, and sad to say for Mismagius, but she immediately goes down to a Night Slash. We do hit Jealous into half with the Dark Pulse, but my life flashes before my eyes when she uses Hydro Pump on Weavile, but thank God he survives on 18 HP. This next sends out her beast, Chandelure, so I immediately pivot into Salamence and Staraptor as Chandelure hits her Fire Blast on Salamence to half. Fortunately enough, that wasn't a crit, so Salamence ends up surviving and Staraptor dodges the incoming Hydro Pump. I focus both of my Mons on Chandelure, hitting it with a Crunch Brave Bird combo that definitely was enough to take it out. This means that all that Staraptor has to do is just survive Jellicin's Hydro Pump on 60 HP. And pretty much we wrap up the battle here with Salamence outspeeding with a Crunch to give us our first Elite Four dub. The next Elite Four member we have to take on is Caitlyn, the Psychic Expert. She sends out her two Pokemon Sigilyph and Musharna as I lead with Claydol and Weavile. Off the rip, we start setting up with Weavile, getting off a Swords Dance as Sigilyph targets Claydol with an Ice Beam. Ice Beam fortunately doesn't crit, so we can get off a Light Screen as Musharna does the exact same thing. Claydol obviously had one job, so I switch into Klinklang as we get a +2 Night Slash off of Musharna that immediately gets it off the field. This also means that we can tank the incoming Ice Beam very comfortably as Caitlyn sends in her next Pokemon, Reuniclus. I then have the beautiful pleasure of one-shotting the Reuniclus with a Night Slash as Sigilyph uses a very weak Air Slash on Weavile, and then Klinklang can get off a Shift Gear. This now sends in her big and bad Bronzong, and the one thing I don't want this thing to do is get off a Trick Room. Klinklang outspeeds, hitting a Gear Grind that nearly takes it to half as we focus it with a Night Slash that brings it to what must be 1 HP. This is very much not good because after Sigilyph hits its Psychic, Bronzong sets up the Trick Room. I then switch into Mandibuzz as Caitlyn uses a Full Restore on Bronzong, which means that we can outspeed taking out the Sigilyph with one more Night Slash. She now sends in Behem, so I switch into Salamence that tanks a Thunderbolt to half as we hit Behem to around the same range with the Dark Pulse. Mandibuzz does get hit by a Gyro Ball Thunderbolt combo that brings it to a crisp 82 HP as we KO the Behem with a Dark Pulse Crunch combo. She next sends in Gothitelle, so I switch into Claydol that fortunately doesn't have to take the Dark Pulse on the way in as Salamence hits the Gothitelle with the Crunch to a quarter. The Trick Room is now over, so we outspeed again and can take out the Gothitelle with the Crunch and set up Light Screen as Bronzong uses Trick Room again. Bronzong then hits a very weak Gyro Ball as we can knock it to half with a Shadow Ball Crunch combo. Now I switch into Weavile as Salamence tanks another Gyro Ball to 41 HP, but we can bring it to a quarter with another Crunch. Not wanting to risk the lives of my best Mons, I switch into Klinklang and Staraptor, and after Klink has to take one more Gyro Ball, we can take it out with a Thunderbolt U-turn combo to give us our second Elite Four dub. Now up next is Marshall, the Fighting Expert, and he sends out Throw and Sock as I lead with Staraptor and Salamence. I immediately get Salamence into the air as Staraptor U-turns into the Sock, and then we switch into Claydol that has to tank a Rock Slide, but for not much. This means that we can take out the Throw with the Fly, but Sock also does some good damage with a Stone Edge on Salamence as Claydol sets up the Reflect. This now gets Poliwhirled on the field, so I get Salamence back into the air. Claydol does have to tank a very weak payback from Sock, but that completely was outclassed by the Psychic Gym boosted Psychic that immediately gives us the KO over him. This means all Claydol has to do is survive the incoming Waterfall, which he does on 96 HP. Minchao is up next, so I switch into Staraptor to Intimidate as we also get the one-hit KO on Poliwrath with a Fly. This does mean that Staraptor has to tank a very weak U-turn as Marshall now sends out Conkeldurr and Minchao. We get Lil Mac back into the air as Staraptor hits the Minchao with a Brave Bird that immediately KOs, but more importantly, he also survives Conkeldurr's Stone Edge. This means that now he sends in his last Mon, Breloom, so I pivot into Mandibuzz as Conkeldurr goes down to Salamance's Fly. But then Breloom uses a Spore to immediately put Mandibuzz to sleep. I then use Earthquake because this Breloom is Focus Sashed, but regardless of my efforts, it still gets back to full health with a Drain Punch after we get Salamence into the air. We then hit the Fly that brings it to 1 HP, breaking his Focus Sash. So after getting dealt awful damage from a Drain Punch, we can KO him with the combination of Earthquake and Air Slash, giving us the dub over Marshall. Last up in the Elite Four roster is Grimsley, and he sends out Liepard and Sharpedo as we send out Weavile and Salamence. On the first turn, Liepard gets a crit with Sucker Punch that brings Salamence to 100 HP. Weavile then gets hit with a very weak Aqua Jet, but then we are able to KO both of them with a flurry of Brick Breaks. Up next, he sends out Honchkrow and Bisharp, and I make a very risky play sending in Claydol, but fortunately we can outspeed the Bisharp with a Brick Break. This obviously overkills the Bisharp, and we tank Honchkrow's Heat Wave very well. This reels in his next Mon, Absol, and so I switch into Staraptor to get off an Intimidate that really doesn't matter since Absol goes down to a Brick Break. Grimsley next sends in Houndoom, so I go for an Earthquake that brings Houndoom to his Focus Sash. We then outspeed Honchkrow and hit it with a very powerful Brave Bird to the red. This then prompts Grimsley to target solely Staraptor with a Hidden Power and Brave Bird, and as I'm saying my goodbyes, Staraptor survives on 11 HP. Holy shit. This then of course makes Grimsley use a full restore, but that doesn't matter because a quick attack Dragon Claw combo just gave us a deathless Elite Four dub. Let's get it. Well, we did it. We conquered the Elite Four and made it farther than I possibly thought we were going to in this run. But now we have our greatest challenge yet versus the champion. Now fortunately we don't have to use the same Pokemon we came into the league with. In Inn's Castle, we can go into a room where we can access the PC to give us our best fighting chance at winning this whole thing. Now when we enter the champion's room, we are kind of forced to break one of my rules. In my Hardcore Nuzlocke, I permit using any legendary Pokemon at all. The game does require you to catch Reshiram though. But if you come in with a full team of 6, you have the option to send him to the PC, so I just go ahead and do that. Sorry about that, fellas. Boys and ladies, if you are out there, it is time to fight the main decider on whether or not we make it to glory or not. Our trials and tribulations have gotten us to this point, so let us do battle with the champion. He sends out his Zekrom as I lead with Weavile. Now Weavile going for a fighting gym boosted Brick Break might look a little weird, but trust me, it was all part of the plan as Zorwart goes down to the attack. At this point, he sends in his Magmortar, so I switch into Salamence that has to tank a Magma Storm to half. After taking a little bit more residual damage, that's all the Magmortar will be able to do, so a super effective Earthquake takes him out. Now up next is his Porygon Z, and with this thing having Ice Beam, that is a big no-no for Salamence, so I switch into Gallade to tank the incoming move. We are then and only then to deliver a very powerful blow with close combat to finish the job. His next Mon is Aerodactyl, and with this thing's amazing moveset, basically countering everything on my team, I have to come up with a solid plan quick. I switch into Klinklang to tank the Aerial Ace and then barely survive the incoming Earthquake. This then lets us retaliate with an Electric Gym boosted Thunderbolt that brings him to a quarter. Knowing all of my progress is about to be erased from existence within Super Potion, I take the turn to Volt Switch, pivoting into Stunfisk. Now I take a huge risk sending in Staraptor, but we do get off the Intimidate, lowering its attack as Aerodactyl uses an Earthquake, but y'all boys know flying types aren't affected by ground moves. This means that we can switch into Gallade that has to tank a resisted Rock Gym boosted Stone Edge, and unfortunately Aerodactyl gets a crit taking out Gallade, and now my hope for beating this battle just hit an all-time low. But y'all boys already know luck is basically my middle name at this point, which is why I switched in Stunfisk, who can tank the Earthquake and take him out with an Expert Belt boosted Thunderbolt. This now means that we have to take on his second to last Pokemon, Slowbro. Wanting to preserve Stunfisk's health, I switch into Staraptor that has to tank a Water Gym boosted Surf to 67 HP. This means that we can U-turn, bringing Slowbro to half and then pivoting into Weavile. Knowing that Weavile only has to tank a normal Surf feels very reassuring because on the next turn we can take out Slowbro with a Night Slash. His last Pokemon is his ace, Zekrom, and knowing that Weavile has a Bolt Strike coming in his future, I switch into Stunfisk to resist it. Zekrom then sets up a very useless Light Screen as we bring him to exactly half with an Expert Belt boosted Earthquake. Now at this point, fellas, we are in what's called the Danger Zone. This Zekrom has a Life Orb that boosts a Pokemon's attack stat by 30% in exchange for some health. I am freaking out, but all we can do is just hold. But my boy Stunfisk does it, surviving on 10 HP, and with Life Orb damage, we can take Zekrom out with one more Earthquake. Holy crap, we did it, fellas. We just beat a Pokemon Volt White Hardcore Nuzlocke, and I'd love to say that we have taken home the win, but we have one more bonus battle we have to take on versus Ghetsis. Now in the fight with Ghetsis, we can't rearrange our Pokemon. The Pokemon we have in our party is all we got against this man. He sends out his Drapion as I lead with Weavile. Now Weavile isn't going to be doing much against him, so I switch into Stunfisk to tank the incoming Cross Poison. Drapion then sets up a Toxic Spikes, basically giving us a free turn to bring it deep into the yellow with an Earthquake. Drapion once more is setting up Spikes, but this gives us a chance to KO him with an Earthquake. Up next is Dusknoir, a super tanky Pokemon, so I stay in and tank an Earthquake to 91 HP as we do very poor damage with Thunderbolt. Realizing I made a mistake keeping in Stunfisk, I switch back into Weavile to take an Earthquake to half. We then use a Night Slash that brings Dusknoir to the red, and as I'm saying my goodbyes to Weavile, this man survives in a range where we can also survive the poison damage. Weavile is definitely going down to poison the next turn, but he's not going down alone. I then just send in my Salamence as Ghetsis sends in his Electros. Literally anything this thing throws at us is going to equal in big damage, so I switch into Klinklang that can barely survive the incoming Thunder. We then hit the world's weakest gear grind as we go down to one more Flamethrower. Rest in peace, brother. I really have no choice here, so I switch into Staraptor. Staraptor can outspeed with a close combat, but after that, it can't take the damage dealt from a super effective Thunder. Rest in peace, bro. I then send in my last resort, Salamence, and after Ghetsis gets off a full restore, we can take Electros out with 2 more Dragon Claws. This now means that we have to go up against a Pokemon I have been worrying about this entire battle, Genesect. And I guess I was right about being worried about this thing since it gets off a super effective Ice Beam that unfortunately crits and ends Salamence. I honestly thought I had enough speed EVs to outspeed, and 2, we always survived a non-crit, which means, fellas, I send in my last Pokemon, Stunfisk. Stunfisk unfortunately immediately goes down to 1 more Ice Beam, which means that we did lose the Ghetsis battle. Now, honestly, this is kind of a bittersweet moment because I have been grinding this game for close to a month and a half, and honestly, this was the most fun I think I've ever had playing these games. All in all, we came so close to beating all the battles, but I am happy how far we came. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like, and if you want to see more painful content like this, drop a sub. I love all of my viewers, especially you, buddy. And so, if you want to see a specific run done, comment down below. I'm definitely not saying that because I'm running out of ideas. But this was a Pokemon Volt White Hardcore Nuzlocke, and I hope to see you in my next run.